Steven Neft, welcome.
Thank you.
You
Thank
are on deck. I'm glad to have you here, and I am looking forward to this conversation for a number of reasons. But before we begin, I always like to try and make some sort of appropriate introduction.
Okay.
So, Steven, you are a digital marketing manager here at the agency with a focus and concentration in SEO and content writing.
Yes.
You've been with us, I would say, between 3 and 4 years at this point in time. Is that correct?
Close to 4, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, good. Nailed it. See, I gave myself the window there. If I had said 3 years, then you say actually closer to 4. But between 3 and 4 years, closer to 4. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
I think you bring a very interesting and different perspective into the work, and I appreciate that. And again, I'm looking forward to this conversation. So let's dive right in, shall we?
Absolutely.
Okay. With you, I have a lot of questions because, quite frankly, we have not had any type of long conversation that didn't have to do with something about work specific, right? So I would say that this is our first human-to-human, just talk and get to know each other kind of conversation.
Cool.
So with that, I guess I would start and say, what is it in your life that led you in the direction of the career path that you're on, getting into SEO? And I know you've done this, content writing at previous companies and businesses, and I think in the luxury goods field. So I'd kind of like to give me your pathway in here, if you would, please.
It was really funny. I actually, it was like 1999, and the company I was working with closed.
Okay.
And so I was looking for a job, and I actually applied at this one place, and it was about the internet, which was sort of like, okay, and this was during the days when retail was still, brick and mortar, not really internet.
Okay.
So I had actually gone for an interview, and it was kind of weird. It was like in a restaurant. It was at Ruby Tuesdays, because the owners of this place, it was called worldofwatches.com.
Okay.
They owned a jewelry store in a mall, and it was next to Ruby Tuesdays. So we had our interview of all places in a restaurant.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. And they said, we want you to write for us. Okay. And I did. And I started with them in a few weeks, and ever since that point, it was like things progressed into SEO, and we were more or less doing like meta descriptions for Yahoo, for AOL, and for MSN at the time.
And this was all for watches?
Yes, for watches. We sold a variety of different watches.
What kind of watches did you guys sell?
Everything from Cartier to Casio.
Really? Okay.
Yes, it was a variety, and we sold like Breitling and Quorum, and it was a whole vast variety of watches we sold. And I was writing the content, the product descriptions, and we were then finding out as we were growing and years progressed, and also the company was sold to another company, which was diamond.com, so it was jewelry then that I was writing about.
Okay. Do me a favor, pull your microphone just a little bit. Just pull it up like closer to you.
How's that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And so before you accepted this position, you said you were working for another company that went out of business. Right. Was that a marketing or advertising type of environment?
It was a furniture retailer, Levitt's Furniture.
Levitt's.
Yes.
You'll love it at Levitt's.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, that's one of those slogans that really stuck home over the years. I think Levitt's was a northeastern furniture retailer originally.
It was, but their corporate office actually was in Boca Raton, and then originally in Miami.
Okay. Now, so you were working. What were you doing at the furniture store? Were you working in retail?
I was the content writer, actually copywriter.
Okay.
And for the national marketing campaigns.
Gotcha. Was that your slogan?
No, I wish it was. No, that was long before I even started there.
Right. Now, have you, again, getting to know more about you, have you always been in the copywriting aspect of this business? Or a copywriter your entire life and career?
More or less. I actually, when I got out of college, I was hired actually at Levitt's as a graphic designer, believe it or not.
Really?
That was in a different day of graphic design, which was like, things were a lot different back then.
Yes.
So, yes.
I don't know if you listened to the episode with Tom, but he started off as a graphic artist at that point in time. Probably similar time era.
Yeah,
right?
we're about the same age.
Yeah. And so, much more drafting. I remember he said, when people said back to the drawing board, it was literally like, throw everything away and start over.
Well, I had like a visual eye,
Mm-hmm.
and it was more or less cutting and pasting and things of that nature, and images,
Mm-hmm.
and like putting pieces of furniture and actually at Levitt's, I had been there like 17 years, and at Levitt's, the position came open for a copywriter. So
Okay.
I then moved into that position because actually writing was my love and my passion.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm piecing all this together. Now, are you from Florida, born and raised?
I moved here when I was 14.
14 from?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh.
Yes.
I bet you didn't know that my father was born in Pittsburgh, and
No.
the Herman family. Yes.
Really?
Yes. We have a large chunk of our family's history is in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
Yeah. And so interesting to know that you're from there. And so you worked your way, you came down here, but, through high school and into college, you always had a desire or focus to get into the creative space?
Yes. I always liked reading, and that, I guess, progressed into writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of funny because I was telling Tammy that I became an avid reader when I was in grade school, sort of because of the fact that I went to this private school.
Right.
And
up there or down here?
In
Pittsburgh.
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And the rabbis and I didn't quite get along too well. And
So was it a private Hebrew school?
oh yeah.
Really?
Yes. And
Tell me about that.
And during
What's that
Hebrew
like?
class, I read a lot of books.
You mean the ones that you were not supposed to be
Exactly.
reading?
Yeah.
Because what you were being taught was not really appealing to you?
Exactly. And it was a private school. It was just kind of interesting. It's horrible to hear, but I was a rebellious child. Let's put it that way.
Really?
Yeah.
Was your family, I guess, devout in their religion or following of? No?
No, but they made me go to the school.
Right. What were some of the benefits of going to a Hebrew school? Was there anything in that experience that you look back on now that was like, I'm glad I had that?
I would guess to say that the English academics were, better than, maybe perhaps a private school at the time.
Right.
But I wasn't real fond of the other aspect. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So
we don't want to go there.
All right. Just wasn't for you.
Right.
Was not a good fit.
Right. I don't think you force anything on anybody. And if you try to force something on to a child, especially, it's not a good thing. So.
Right. No, I understand. It's as I watch our children grow, and I think it's different generationally, but I look at our kids and I say, well, they're going to determine what it is that they're going to become, right? It's our job to help shape and guide them and teach them, right? And I mean, it's certainly an intensive process, but to suggest that, okay, I have a predetermined notion of what my daughter should or will be I think that's a notion that we're all moving away from generationally at this point in time.
I think in my parents' case, they wanted to make sure I was bar mitzvahed.
Okay.
They always were very focused on what other people thought sometimes.
Oh, really? So had to maintain.
I actually had 2 bar mitzvah. Usually you get 1 instructor. I had 2. They were very afraid.
You had 2 bar mitzvahs?
No, I had 2 bar mitzvah teachers.
Oh, 2 bar mitzvah teachers.
Instructors, yeah.
Your parents were afraid that you were not going to complete the training or this?
They were afraid I wasn't going to do it right or whatnot because I really did not like Hebrew a whole lot. So
right. Now, can you do you still speak? Because
I don't
referred
remember.
to as Hebrew. Is it the Hebrew language? Like when you speak Hebrew, you speak Hebrew. I should know this, and I'm.
It's okay. No, but I don't really know. After a year, I think it's sort of like if you don't do something for a long enough period of time, you don't remember it or whatnot.
So, and again, I'm asking questions that I should know already, but the Hebrew language is the language of the Jewish people. Correct.
Yeah.
Then what is Yiddish? Yiddish is sort of like a slangy
Yiddish
kind of version,
sort of
or
slang. It's funny. I probably know more Yiddish because I had a grandmother I grew up with.
Right.
And she would always say things, so I would pick up those words. So I probably remember Yiddish better than I do.
Right. Now, some Yiddish words that I think that, are a regular part of almost any family growing up in the Northeast, but certainly ours would be like schlep, right?
Yes.
Like you got to schlep this stuff in. You're a schmuck, right? Schmeck. I'll think of more, but they even though, and I was having a conversation with my sister yesterday, because our family is, if you go back on my father's line, was Jewish, many years ago. We are Ashkenazi.
Wow.
If you go all the way back. Now at this point in time, if you were to do the math, I'm 12.5%, but I was raised Christian. But even still, in that environment, growing up in North Jersey, you're in the vicinity of New York City, and there's a schmear, right?
Yeah, well, there's certain words like schmuck, and we won't go there, but can we say that?
We can say whatever we want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is an adults program.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. You can say whatever the fuck you want, Steven.
Oh, awesome.
There you go. So, all right. So anyway, so the Hebrew, now that we've identified and clarified some of the things that I didn't know, thank you for doing that. It didn't stick. You end up coming down to Florida, and it sounds to me that as a young boy, you found solace or comfort or enjoyment in reading.
Yes.
Was it that it created worlds for you to explore in your mind?
Still love to read, but yes, I always loved reading bestsellers and literary, and I even loved reading I want to say perhaps there was a film critic for the New Yorker magazine, Pauline Kael, who I always admired. I guess reading her work, I liked how she wrote, and I always tried to write with authority, which is something I thought was important.
Okay. So when does the writing and the drawing and the art start to come into place in your life?
High school.
Yeah.
I was the editor of the high school paper, I believe.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I did not know that. What was that like?
It was fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, that was where we did lots of graphic art and cutting and pasting, and picked that up then. So it was something that I had a skill that...
Did you, as you get exposed to this and, moving on as you're looking at into college, I assume, did you study art in college? Was that a part of what you studied?
Communications major.
Communications.
Yes. And there's a vast communications background, and I was very into film at the time, as well as writing and reading, so literature. So
writing, reading, literature, and film.
Yes.
If you were to, out of all of those right now, what are you most passionate about? What gives you the most joy to participate in?
Well, I love to write. I mean, it's the way I communicate best. Talking, probably not as good a talker as I am a writer. So.
What do you find about, the writing? Why is that?
I don't know. It's sort of when I write something, it's sort of it's almost like channeling. To me, I just go off into a different world sometimes. Sometimes, especially if I'm writing something and I'm at my desk too, somebody can say something to me and I'll just be in another world. It's just how I operate.
So then, fitting that after all the years of loving to read, learning and loving to write, going through years as a designer and a copywriter, that you end up in the digital marketing space.
Yes.
In SEO and content,
yes.
Right? Do you feel that, the work that you do, right, aside from it being an expression of your own creativity in a way that you communicate, do you get any sense of satisfaction from the reality of the way that it works, right? Like SEO, your job is to write stuff that helps our clients' websites rank better and draw
Correct.
more attention. How much of that factors into your mindset when you're writing?
A lot. I try to, you know, well, for one, I try to write hoping people will read it. I know that, you know, sometimes people say, oh, well, no one really looks at that. But I think they do.
Right.
And, you know, it's funny because when I was at World of Watches, the first year I was there, like it was Christmas time. And we were so busy with customers' orders that I had to actually help customers on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah. My mouth hurt. That's how much I talked. And it really gave me a very good education into this people going online to look at things, because people do read what's going on online.
Yes.
And, you know, you want to give them as much information as possible. And you also want to entice what they're looking at. You know, what makes this stand out better than the others. And so when I'm writing that, I try to keep that in mind as much as possible. I might not necessarily like something. I mean, I might not necessarily want to drive a Ram 1500, but when I'm writing about one, I try to romance it as much as possible and make
Right.
it as much as exciting as possible for the person that's reading about it. You know, you also have to look at the customer who's buying it, and, you know, also try to write something that would appeal to them.
You have to be a bit of a chameleon, right?
Yes, exactly.
You have to place yourself in the, you know, the buyer or the reader's shoes, if you will, and say,
Perspective, yes.
what, you know,
Yeah.
how does a man or woman who wants to buy a Ram 1500 truck want to have this communicated to them, right?
Sure, absolutely. You have to write to the audience and, you know, figure out who it is you are writing to
Right.
for. And, you know, I remember when I first started at Levitt's, like my chief copywriter once said to me, gave me this book about features and benefits. And, you know, we more or less want to write things that are features and benefits, that, you know, what sets this item apart from something else that you could buy somewhere else or the competition. So
you've spent, you know, a majority of your career writing for retail.
yes,
I mean, furniture, watches, cars.
luggage too.
Oh, luggage.
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. What, you know, if you were to look at all those, we got 4 different categories. You got furniture, luggage, watches, cars, right? All consumer items, you know, larger ticket in some cases, consumer items. What are some of the common attributes that you saw, and what are the things that really differentiate? I mean, and not like furniture is furniture and, you know, luggage is luggage, but you're speaking to a different emotional appeal for these products, right? I mean, a car is certainly, it takes up a different mindset or a level of importance or priority for somebody to buy than luggage, right? How do you approach these different products?
I guess in my mind, I try to make it, when I'm writing something, I want it to be as appealing as possible. And also what sets us apart, you know, to romance the item as much as possible.
Right.
What sets us apart, when I say romance, I don't mean like,
No, I got you.
know,
Just, you know, I mean, provide some,
some
excitement
sort of
to
excitement.
it. Yeah.
And, you know, and also what makes this, why would you want to buy this? You know, why would you want to spend like something more for something? And, you know, it's very much, you know, people could either, you know, depending on what it is you're writing about, the vehicle, the item, the wristwatch or whatnot. I mean, to me, I would also use the same integrity if I was writing about a $50 watch as opposed to a $10,000 watch.
Right.
Because, you know, it doesn't really matter what you're selling to the customer. It does matter what you're selling, but it doesn't matter what the item is, because there is a market for everything.
Yes. I'm curious, when you were working for the watch company, did that entice you into learning more about, you know, luxury watches, or any, did watches appeal to you, right? Did you get the watch bug?
But of course, I think, you know, it's really obvious too. You know, it's like we all, you know, it's really, I think when you're around things like that, I mean, cars are a little different story because, you know, I only have one car.
Right, right.
But with watches, yeah, it's became much more enticing to buy a watch or a piece of jewelry or even like sunglasses for that matter.
What is it, you know, because I find watches fascinating, and I don't own many at all. And in fact, this watch that I'm wearing was handed down to me from my dad, and I love this watch. And I have a Garmin, you know, sports watch. That's it. Now, that's not to say that I don't have desire for a number of different watches. I can just never seem to make up my mind about, you know, like, what's the first one I want to buy? But what is it about a timepiece, and particularly for men, I think, that is so... why is it such a thing, right? Because at this day, like, you got an iPhone, you got a phone. We're in no shortage of knowing what time it is, right?
Exactly, but we still want to wear that watch. And I think it's sort of the idea that perhaps it's a luxury that most people might be able to afford. I mean, it's more affordable. I mean, there are watches. I mean, I remember writing about a Rolex watch that was $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
It was platinum.
Yes.
But in reality, most watches are probably, they're a status symbol.
Yes.
And, you know, it's like everything else. We can either be driving an inexpensive vehicle or we want something more luxurious. And I think people do it maybe as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Perhaps it's also, you know, they're keeping up with the Jones aspect. There's so many different reasons why people want something. But, you know, it really all boils down to, I think with watch, it's a prestige symbol. I mean, sometimes it's the mark that you've arrived.
Right. It is a form of self-expression.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no doubt that a really nice, high-quality watch does
absolutely
say something about the person that's wearing it. And sometimes it can say the wrong thing, right? You know, like you can see somebody wearing a watch and you're kind of like, okay, buddy, right? You know, and then other times you see somebody maybe wearing that exact same watch, and for whatever reason, it just feels like a better fit on that person, and it doesn't seem so ostentatious.
Well, it's also like ladies with handbags.
Yes.
The same aspect. You know, there's so many different handbags that women wear, and, you know, most ladies, I'm not trying to be sexist, you know, but
sure,
you can't have just one handbag, you have to have several, and, you know, it's, you know, the designer names and whatnot, and, you know, and it's even funnier when you bring that up too. Like, you look at something but, you know, it's funny, like, one of the most expensive handbags for women is like the least ostentatious.
The Birkin?
Very good, yeah.
Yeah.
The Hermes. It's not something that shouts at you.
It's a beautiful bag. It really is.
It is. It's really a nice bag.
And every time I see one, you know, not obviously, but, and I don't remember what they retail, but it's significant, right?
Well, from what I remember, and this was a while back, they were like $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, I thought around 10, and depending on the material, could go up from there.
Well, they're handmade.
But you're right. When you look at that bag, it's a very clean, elegant, nice-looking bag. It is not ostentatious.
No.
It doesn't have logos all over it.
No.
Which, whenever I see one, but it's a power bag, right?
Yeah,
I mean, when you see that bag, you're like, oh yeah. Right?
Yeah, it's not like something everybody can afford. It's definitely puts you, you know, in a different sort of perspective.
You know, it's funny. The luxury goods market, right? Is huge. I mean, it's thriving worldwide. I think, and I don't remember what the conglomerate company is, the one that owns like Louis Vuitton and Chanel. There's a conglomerate in Europe.
I want to say Hennessy, Louis Vuitton. It's LV, Hennessy.
Yeah, but there's more. They've got like 15 of the brands under one conglomerate, and whoever owns it or is the CEO is certainly one of the top, you know, 20, 25 wealthiest people in the world. It's huge. And when you look at anything about China or Asia or these different, I wouldn't call that an emerging market, but the luxury goods in these places are crazy. And you mentioned, you know, writing about a Rolex watch that costs $100,000. And, you know, in my A couple years ago, I got really fascinated by watches, and I studied them a lot. And so, yes, you got Rolexes that can go up to that, based on the materials. You look at, Patek Philippe, you look at Vacheron, you look at Audemars Piguet, if I'm pronouncing all these right, but you're talking about watches or a Langazona. These ones, these are $100,000, $200,000, $250,000 timepieces, right? And you go, man, it's like, it's insane. That watch could be a home for somebody. And for somebody, it's just something that they wear on their wrist as a statement of who they are. And on one hand you say, is it kind of fucked up? And on the other hand you say, well, it's relative, right? It's relative. The person that can afford a $250,000 watch, that person's obviously doing
very well, and that is a relative expense to them, just like for the person who might buy, a $500 something, whatever that watch is. And so there is a sort of a relativity. It just does show the disparity at times in people's financial performance. I don't know if you've been paying attention recently, but Rolex is, you can't even get them. I would, not that you would or need to, but if you go to any Rolex retailer, they typically used to have 30, 40, 50 watches. You go in now, they might have 2. They are not available anywhere. Wow.
The demand is so great that as soon as they come in, they're being swept up immediately. And so retailers, if you were to put your name on a list and wait, you're going to wait a year and a half for even just, like a very standard stainless Submariner, right? You can't touch them. And they are immediately going to the pre-owned market. And so let's take a stainless men's Submariner, black dial, black bezel. Used to be, I think, a $7,500 watch. You can't touch one for less than $13,000 or $14,000 right now. Like, they're immediately being flipped. And Rolex is doing nothing to increase the production.
Why should they? That's sort of the whole idea behind it. It's like with Hermes, or with women waiting in line, people waiting in line for the Birkin or the Kelly bags. It's the same sort of idea that if you make it more difficult to get, it becomes more desired.
Right. It's crazy. We live in Aventura, and so, we live right by the Aventura Mall. And all through COVID, we've gone over there regularly, and on any given day or weekend, there are 3 or 4 stores that always have a line.
I know. I live right near town center in Boca.
Okay.
And it's
same thing.
Gucci, Louis Vuitton. It's like looking at Cartier. It's like what is going on? It
is a massive line. Every single time I go to and I've been up to Boca Town Center recently as well too. In fact, that's where I got this jacket. Thank you. And it's interesting, the luxury goods market is changing. For example, I went into Saks Fifth Avenue up in Boca because I wanted to start, over the last 2 years, particularly with COVID and all that stuff. You saw me for a while. I was wearing sweatpants to work every day. Like Adidas sweatpants and an Adidas golf shirt was like my work outfit, which is, okay, whatever. I was like, it's time to start getting some business clothes again. So I went back, and there's a guy that I work with at Saks in Boca. Great guy. And I would go in. He's like, Chris, we hardly are selling any suits. We don't sell any of that. It's just that business is just starting to come back right now. What they're selling are $1,000 a pair of sneakers. Can't keep them. Like luxury sweatsuits, luxury jeans, like $high jeans and $high sneakers. They can't even keep them. They're turning so quickly, which just shows like this whole shift. But the money's still being spent. And you said, you see these lines. It's remarkable, right?
It's like the funniest thing, because I will sometimes periodically just go to town center just to get something, and I'll walk through the mall and mask on and everything.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm always in awe that there's always like a line in front of Louis, in front of Gucci. They're like right near each other too. It's
the same thing at Boca Town Center, and it's the same thing in Aventura. And I will tell you that when you look at the people standing in line, I don't know that I get the sense that these are like super high net worth people standing in line, right? It's
funny
aspirational.
you say that. I had the same thought.
Right? It seems like regular, everyday folks, you know, that are aspiring to the brand, right? And they are waiting in line to, you know, to get it, even in this day and age right now, you know? And it just goes to show how, you know, the luxury goods market had gone from, you know, something that was for the few, right? And it's really spread. And I think that's what, and I don't know this is a good or a bad thing, right? I mean, I don't have an opinion about it, but certainly more people are desiring high-end goods and materials. Why do you think that is? Like, why is that?
Guess, you know, it's sort of a mark of, you know, success. You know, it's also many high-end, they have quality. Rolex never goes out of style. It never really depreciates.
Right.
So I guess that might be the mindset, perhaps. I know that for years Rolex has always been never really, you know, you could resell one.
They hold the value, like, I mean, incredible. And right now, if you could get your hands on any of the reasonably desired models, you're going to double your money almost instantly.
Yeah. It's amazing. But you know, it's just, and it's also perhaps the fact that the stock market is okay. And I think that's also an indication of luxury always does well when things are better. When, you know, the Wall Street's doing okay, then we all it tends to trickle into the high-end markets, especially the luxury goods.
When you were working more in that environment, you know, you mentioned that it got so busy, you were answering the phones and dealing with customers. What were the customers like to deal with in that environment?
They were very nice.
Yeah.
I mean, but we sold a variety of different items. It wasn't all high-end. But I think too, it was very much like people were not really, they were more afraid back then to put their credit card information online.
Right.
Now it's totally different.
Right. They were totally okay giving it to a stranger over the phone, but
right, exactly. You know?
Right.
But this was a whole different world, but it was very interesting. Most people were very happy. I mean, I remember one guy calling because he seemed to think this, my favorite one, which is weird because I could still remember this. He said that we were like, perhaps that the Movado watches we had were counterfeit.
Oh, really?
And I thought, like, do you seriously think? But you know, by the back of my mind, like, I don't really think they're going to counterfeit Movados as much as, you know, like, if you're going to counterfeit something, do something that's more than a few $100s.
Right, right.
I mean, Movado are either
the Movado Museum watch.
Yes,
was that not the one with the little gold dot? It was
yes.
Like yes. Very simple black dial.
At the time, that was very, very, very popular. And I was like, if you're going to change the parts out of a watch, it's not going to be a Movado. Trust me.
Yeah, I remember, you know, growing up around New York City. You know, I mean, it was very common for us by the time we got to high school. You know, you go into the city and there was always the guys out, you know, where they had the fake Gucci. It was always fake Gucci bags. Like Gucci, like at the time, the Gucci bag was the bag, right? So you had these fake Gucci bags, and I remember, like, I think I even went in with my mom once and we got like one or two of them. But you would like, you'd sort of be wandering around certain areas of the city, and then you'd see like the guy, right? Yes, and the guy that, like, they would have them out on like a big tarp.
Yes.
So that if the cops came, they could, you know, they could bundle the tarp up real quick and make a stash, right? But there would always be all these Gucci, you know, the fake Gucci bags, and that was such a big deal. And fake Rolexes, if I remember. It was like fake Gucci and fake Rolex bags.
Well, the best way to determine a fake Rolex is really easy.
How's that?
You have to look at the second hand. Most Rolexes are automatic. And... So, the fake ones were probably quartz.
Right.
And the hand like does a little stuttering thing. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because on a quartz, if you've ever noticed on a quartz and an automatic watch, the automatic has a smooth operation.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
See? Tricks of the trade right there.
Yes.
Got that, everybody? Don't get fooled by a fake Rolex. It'd be a sad day. It would be a sad day. spinning back, when we sat down before we started rolling here, you referenced a movie, right? An older movie. And so I wanted to kind of come back to that, because it is my understanding that you might be into old theater and film. Is that correct?
New too, for that matter.
Okay.
Well, I don't...
Don't discriminate against
exactly,
old or new? Any particular styles or genres that you really enjoy the most?
When it comes... I have like very Catholic taste when it comes to things. For
a nice Jewish boy?
Yeah, I know. What can I say? But I tend to like a variety of different things. I don't like discriminate. I love like Star Wars. I'm an avid Star Wars fan. It was like funny because Gregory mentioned something today on the WhatsApp, and you're a Star Wars fan? Because I used to have a coworker. I was telling him like I would tell him something like a line from a Star Wars movie, and he knew exactly what it was that I was saying. Like I would say, "You will be," which was Yoda saying that you will be scared.
Yes, you will be.
And I would just say that.
That's from Empire Strikes Back.
Very good, yeah.
Do you remember, where did you see Star Wars for the first time?
God, I think it was a theater in Hollywood. A little theater, too.
Really?
It was like a...
Here?
In Hollywood, Florida, yeah.
How do you remember... I have specific memories of the first time I saw Star Wars, so I'd be curious to, like, what was that experience like for you?
I loved it. I just thought it was crazy. It was just so amazing. But what was funny was I loved the first one. I saw it, like at the time you would go to theaters, and we didn't have things on video, or we weren't streaming back then.
Sure.
But the thing with, I guess, with Star Wars was The Empire Strikes Back. I had to write a paper on it. So I ended up going to a theater to see it like 7 times.
Oh, yeah?
Like nonstop, just for
really
the thesis that I had to write on it.
What was the thesis?
It was for a film class, and I just remember it being like the contrasts. From what I remember, it was like the dark versus light, which was the actual story of the film, and then the lighting in certain aspects were very light and bright, and then in the costumes and the music. So that was sort of what I vaguely remember from that, but I remember having to write a paper, and then that was sort of how I became hooked on Star Wars, because The Empire Strikes Back, I knew it, like every line of the movie.
Now, as a Star Wars series fan, are you pleased with how they all turned out? Or I'm curious.
I guess I'm prejudiced. I didn't love the prequels, but I did like the latter 3. I thought they were well done.
Right.
But I still want to say that the Empire was probably the best, and the New Hope would be number 2.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I remember I had to be, they came out in 77, 78. I don't know what year Star Wars came out. So I was 6 or 7 years old. And I still remember my dad he was partners in a dealership in New Jersey. It was on Route 46. And for whatever reason, we went to go see Star Wars like on an afternoon, like, like a 4 o'clock showing on a Tuesday, whatever it was when it first came out. Theater was packed. I remember standing in the back row, like there was no seats in the whole theater, and I stood and watched the whole thing, and it was just, so captivating. I mean, just like, still, if you were to look back from we're not the same age, but we're relatively close enough to be able to look back at film over the last 30, 40 years and say, I don't know if there was another movie that came out ever that had that type of an impact on me, just from a wow, like it was just so great in every way.
It was just an amazing film, and it was so well made, and even like the dialogue, everything was so perfect.
It was wonderful, and I'm with you. So A New Hope was killer. Empire Strikes Back was great. Return of the Jedi was it was still okay. You got to see Darth Vader at the end, you got to see right, you got to see him take his helmet off, and so there was some cool stuff there. But then the prequels were just horrendous, and then the recent ones, they've been good, but I just it's just, as a person who's into creativity and what have you, and I'm no expert on film, not even, but damn, whenever there's like a big franchise they just find ways to fuck it up, right? It's like they gotta make it appeal to everybody, and instead of focusing in on like really killer writing and really meaningful story, and get rid of all the cheesy shit, you know, and just like there is yet to be like a real alien movie or outer space movie. That's not true. There are a couple that nobody's made one that's like so real that it's terrifying, right? Like truly terrifying, not from special effects, but all these companies have these opportunities to make these really great movies that would be like real mental thrillers, right? And they all kind of sort of,
I know, it's
well, we got to sell fucking toys, and you know, it stinks. And Star Wars, like it had the beginnings of that.
Well, I think Star Wars, I think too, it was the first one. It was the one that really, like, merchandising became so big, and no one really quite expected it to be, as no one thought it was going to be the hit it was. So
right.
I think that was
what, and we'll end on this. I'm gonna pose this question to you. This will be how we kind of wrap this phase of our conversation up, because we'll do more of these over time.
Cool.
If you were to look back on Star Wars, is there a theme or a message or something inherent in what that story was about that has stuck with you all these years and maybe even impacted your life?
I don't know, I guess maybe the idea of good versus evil and good winning out, perhaps. You know,
right.
That's always, and I tend to be an optimist, a cocky-eyed optimist at times, and you know, it's sort of you always hope for the things will be okay, things will work out, and you know, good will, you know, victor.
Good will prevail.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that is the overwhelming message, and in addition to that, is there's this sort of twist. You've got the light over darkness. You know, good will prevail. Good is usually the small guy, big is the bad guy, which is a little bit stereotypical.
It's very Hollywood.
But you also get the appreciation. At least I did, is that the darkness often comes from people who were good and then were hurt.
Yes.
And couldn't reconcile with that, and so that pain, seeps into their very being, and just becoming darker and darker and more negative is like this inevitable outcome. And then it's like they use that pain to fuel their revenge or control, or to make sure they're the ones doing the hurting. Right?
Yeah, you hit it in a nutshell. It's sort of like a microcosm for them.
Right, because at the end, Darth Vader was a very sad man, and you got the sense that there was great
you actually
regret.
felt sorry for him at the
yeah.
In the Return of the Jedi. You sort of, I know, imagine
you were watching like, what are these two guys talking about? Well, let's wrap up there in the positive side, in the light, and say, and I agree, always have to have a positive mental attitude.
I agree.
Always be optimistic about the future. And so we share that.
Yes.
Amongst many other things. Steven, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it. And look forward to the next time we are able to sit down and communicate. All right?
Awesome.
All right. Great job.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steven.